quick with these videos. So today we're going to be now working with some BC heat set paints, which I have right here on my table. I showed you these paints the other day. They are very, very rich in pigments, but I was having a lot of trouble getting them to dissolve in my Eco House Extra Mild Citrus Thinner, which is what I use instead of odorless mineral spirits. So after some investigating, I found that it seems the newer heat set paints on the market all need to have a bit of their own thinning medium in the mixes to get them to perform properly. So I have now ordered some of the thinning medium from BC Paints that I got it from Dolls by Sandy. All the BC Paint products you see me demonstrating here I actually purchased, including the thinner. And so I'm going to now try mixing them again. I have a piece of a vinyl belly plate, anatomically correct. Y'all ignore that part. And I'm going to be testing them on this. This particular paint system does not come with its own primer. They do say that you can use the thinning medium, I believe it is, as a primer. I haven't done that for the sake of time. I'm moving along, so we're just going to be doing it on bare vinyl today and see how it goes. So I'm going to do the same thing with these that I did in my last test of the last brand I tested. So I'm going to open up our red here. And these paints are kind of stringy, sticky, creamy. Someone described a lot of the new paints that are out today as being like pudding. I heard that said. And you do have to be careful with this brand. It's more stringy than the last brand I showed you. So yeah, like I just got a little bit of that on the side of the jar getting it out of there, so you got to be careful with that. So let me wipe that up. Alrighty, so what I'm going to do is I've got a little paint there on my palette, and with that paint I'm going to add some of my odorless thinner, or no, I'm a citrus thinner, I'm sorry, I keep saying odorless. It's not odorless actually. So there's that. And as you see, and as we showed before when we were talking about these paints, let me see if I can tilt my camera down a little more. Let me get a better angle here. There we go. When you start trying to dissolve them in citrus thinner, they're very lumpy and grainy. So they dissolve to a certain degree, but they don't make a smooth transition with just citrus thinner. So I now am going to open up the thinning medium. I haven't even opened this up, so I'm going to be looking at this for the first time with you guys. And it has a little cap cover. So the thinning medium is kind of thick looking. Get a toothpick out. It's very creamy. I'm going to stir that a little bit. So that's what it looks like. So we're going to add, this is the BC Paints, BC Heat Set Paints Thinning Medium. So you can't really pull this out in drops like some of the others I've tried because it's thicker. So I'm just going to take my toothpick and put it on there and wipe it off my brush and then mix that in with my paint. And we'll see if we get a better consistency to our paint. So that did dissolve. That makes the paints dissolve much better. I probably need a little more of my citrus thinner because it's not as liquid as I would like it to be. But it does appear that adding some of the thinning, the accompanying thinning medium from this company in with your citrus thinner, or if you're using odorless thinner, you should get the same results. It does give you a better response. And while I'm thinking about it, I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out there because I had another consumer to write me and tell me that if you were using she said, if you're using BC Paints, be sure when you're done to clean your brushes and not leave your brushes sitting with paint on them like we have done at times with Genesis, because the BC paints will dry out on your brush and ruin your brush. So just a word of caution about that to everyone. I don't know if the other brand I tested is that way or not, but that's what I was told about this one. So I'm going to paint this onto a eQuest sponge. This sponge is a sponge I've used many times. It's just stained. Okay. And then we're going to pounce this onto our, probably got a little bit too much on there actually, to our belly plate. There you can see it very well. And of course, as you'll see from the pictures that I post when I'm done, what you're seeing on this video camera is not as true to how intense it really is, because my camera just doesn't pick it up. In fact, this is what I'm going to tell you about the BC paints. In the beginning, when I tried them with just odorless thinner, I got a much better result using, or citrus thinner, using them than I did with the other brand I was testing. And it would appear that these pigments are stronger. These are stronger, more like the golden fluid acrylic paints. So if you're used to using an air dry paint, you're used to working with something that has more intensity in application, then you will like the BC paints. And initially my response was that I liked it better as well, because I was used to that. But I will say that the alternative of the other system I tested is that they're probably a little more translucent, or not more translucent, but easier to not, they're easier to apply them in a translucent manner, because you would build your layers up and build more color. So if you're one of these people that's comfortable with building layers that are very thinned, then just know that for this particular brand of paint, you're going to have to thin it out more, because it's more like thinning down an air dry acrylic would be, because it's pretty vibrant. Some people are really going to like that because they are used to using a toothpick splatter of Genesis, and so that's really going to appeal to some people. I will say that I did ask about light fastness, if these paints contained any additives for UVL stabilizers or UVL protection in them, and I was told no. I've done some write-ups about what the response was in my research and how I feel about that, and there is some protection to fading when you have a really good pigment. The pigment can hold itself to a certain degree, but it is still better to have some UVL protectants or stabilizers added. And so I always encourage people to look for a varnish that does have that added. And at this point in time, the BC Paints Heat Set Varnish does not have any UVL protectants, stabilizers, or additives added to it. I did write Beatrice and Sandy at Dolls by Sandy and express to them that I felt like it might be a good idea to include that it might be a better option. But of course, that decision is not mine. It was just a suggestion as a consumer. So when you're buying these, you can decide how you feel about that. There are alternatives to get around it. If you wanted to use the paints and then use another brand varnish that's got UVL protection in it, you could do that. If you wanted to use the paints and then once you're done painting, get a product that's a thinning medium or even an air dry sealing medium that has UVL protection, and put that over it as a layer, and then varnish back over the top of that with whatever varnish. There's a couple of ways you can work around that, but it is just really nice to have it already in the system. And like I said, these apparently don't, and they may be fine without it. I don't know. There's no way I can know just on the get-go with that right now, just now learning about them myself and testing them out. I'm just putting out the information that I have learned. So take that for what it's worth. All right, so we did the red. The next thing we're going to do is, we played with blue the other day. let's do the burnt umber, I guess. Or we could do yellow ochre. Well, it's not yellow ochre, it's just bright yellow. I guess we could do yellow. Let's do that. All right, so I'm going to get a little of the paint. I don't think I need as much as I've been getting because this one's pretty strong. I get some thinner. Add the paint to my thinner. I'm going to get some of the thinning medium from the BC Paint Company. Put that on a toothpick. Put that in the mix. Close that up for a minute. Gonna brush that off my toothpick. And mix all that together. Now the yellow seemingly dissolved a lot better in just the citrus thinner by itself. So that may be true of some colors, because some pigments are heavier than others. So like blues are heavier. I know that. Maybe some of the red ones are. So maybe that's one factor as well, that the yellows might just already dissolve more easily because of that. But there's your yellow. So the whole point of what I'm doing right now is showing you that if you add a little bit of their thinning medium, then your citrus thinner, or if you like to use odorless thinner, whatever you like to use, will dissolve. Let's do a plucked wedge right quick. Let me grab something and pluck this. I'm just going to pluck a few holes in this wedge. There we go. So there, I've plucked my wedge. And we're going to paint on this with the yellow. As you can see, it's very... Now, you're going to have to keep stirring this, and both companies have told me that as you use it, you'll still have to periodically stir it, which was true or is true of Genesis as well. Maybe not as much so, but there. All right, so I've got some on there. Now let's pounce some of that on here. Now that color is more subtle, but there again, you don't want a bright yellow. It's still there. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe at that angle you can see it a little bit. Once again, I'll do a picture after I'm done. So if you were doing the method where you do red, yellow, blue to try to create your skin tone, then that would be as much yellow as you would want to lay at one time, because it did make a color change, but it's just hard to photograph it, or video it rather. So there's the yellow. I'm going to go beside that with, we'll just go ahead and do the blue. And rinse my brush out. Gonna get a little blue. Get a little of the thinning medium. Not thinning medium, citrus thinner. Gonna melt that in there to start with just some of that. As well as I can get it to do. Then I'm going to take a toothpick. Get some of the BC Paints thinning medium. Add that to my mix. And stir. And dissolve everything together. Kind of have to smush it against the sides of the well, because that thinning medium's thick too. Okay, there's my blue. Grab a wedge and pluck it again. I should have probably already had some of these plucked, but I'm just kind of trying to do it as I go. The reason I'm not using any more of my horse sponges is since I know that that can dry out on your brushes. I didn't want to have a lot of horse sponges to have to try to clean up with this BC paint when I got done. All right, so there's my so the blue in this paint line is very intense. I do know that. So here we go. And I tried not to get too much of it on here for that reason, on the wedge for that reason. Might could put a little more on there, but see that. Now you have to watch it because if you get a little grainy piece of paint in there that didn't dissolve as well, when you pounce it on the vinyl, you may see it on your vinyl. So then you're going to have to, dissolve it on there. Alrighty. So this one is called, these two did not come in the primary set I ordered. I've ordered a dark brown and a night brown because I wanted to see if I'm painting hair, how is this going to look? Because I didn't try this with the other brand of paint that I tested, but I already know from, well, these are hard to open. I already know from where I played with the blue vein on it that to get a more intense color, I'm going to have to use less of my citrus thinner and more paint and then some of their thinner. So this is the, what do they call this? Night brown. So I'm going to put that on my brush. Put that in my well here. And I'm just going to follow what I have as an instinct here and not use my odorless thinner or my odorless thinner alternative, which is citrus thinner. I'm not going to use that. I'm just going to use the thinning medium. And the reason being is I know I want a thicker application because I'm going to mimic painting hair. So I'm going to get about that much and put it in there with that little bit of paint. And we'll see what I get. Lay this over to the side. So mixing just the paint with just the thinning medium that comes with the paint from the company. I want to see how that looks. So that's a little pastier than I want. So I'm going to say just a drop or two of my citrus thinner. So if you can see that, that's my thick mixture. So now I'm going to say, let me see if I've got a skinnier brush over here. Let's say I'm painting hair. Let's pretend that this side of the belly plate over here is a head and I'm painting hair. All right. This brown is not exactly the color at all that I would use. It's a little, I'd probably have to doctor it a little bit, but we'll see. So if I am painting hair, well, this is a poor job of showing hair painting because this is not the kind of brush I would need, but let's just say. Let me add a little more thinner to that. So if you mix it more thickly, more concentrated, I guess is the word I'm looking for, that's what you're going to have to do to make your hair paints, which is the same true with Genesis too. So it's the same kind of deal. And I didn't have a color in the other brand I tested a while ago, other than a burnt umber. I didn't really have a color to practice hair painting with, so let's see. Yep, that would work. Now, like I said, those are big crude lines, but and sometimes you can smooch your brush out and make it fan out a little bit so that it separates, and then you can get, well, it's not working on this brush, but you get more hair looking little hairs. Anyway, so there's my brown sample of hair. So I'm going to heat set this now, and come back, and then I'll do the varnish layer over it in another video. I'll take a picture of this for you all to see. But the end result is that, yes, the BC paints, if you want to be successful with them, you need to use some of their thinning medium along with whatever thinner you prefer, odorless thinner or citrus thinner. You can see right there in my yellow right there that it's already separating, so it has to be stirred regularly. But that's your BC paints.